Welcome to your Route to Wellbeing podcast. I'm Sue Fullergood, and I'm absolutely sure that you deserve to feel great, and it's possible for you to pulse with energy. So if you're not thriving right now, or if there's something that's interrupting your thriving, then maybe this podcast is just what you're looking for. I've tapped into the knowledge base of experts in the 11 domains of well-being. Each of the experts has something that I think is part of the crucial knowledge that you need to be able to really take care of yourself. And so listen in and see if you can get that magical piece of information that's going to make the difference for you. Please feel free to share this with your friends and family, whoever you think may benefit from it. Please push the subscribe button so that you can be alerted when future episodes are available. Thank you for listening. Good morning. I am Sue Fullergood from the Energy Incubator, and I am so excited to have with me on my podcast this morning, Your Route to Wellbeing, Professor Elna MacIntosh, who is a well-known personality in the realm and the field of sexual health. She is quite the most extraordinary lady, and we are so lucky to have her here today. It's taken us many months to pin her down and get her available to be here. And so this is a special day, and I'm really excited. Professor Elna MacIntosh is a sex advisor and educator, a researcher and a therapist, and she's been doing this for 35 years. Actually, I think it's probably longer than that. She's been helping people feel sexually normal and powerful and supported so that they can express their sexuality healthily and that they can explore their sexuality both as men and women. She envisages and works towards a sexually enlightened world. She's written hundreds of articles. She's received rewards and been on TV shows. She's just an acclaimed and amazing lady. And on top of that, she has run 7 comrades. She's climbed Kilimanjaro. She's a gold medalist, if you don't mind, in the Ironman, 5 gold medals, if you please. And she has survived breast cancer twice, and she was just telling me now that she has also survived a pulmonary embolus last year. So we are really privileged to have Professor Elna MacIntosh with us today. I must just share a little story. When I first contacted Elna about collaborating, about sharing what I was doing in my work, quite a lot of years ago, I went to see her in her offices. And the next time we got to meet each other, this very highly acclaimed and important lady said, no, this time I'll come to you. That's how humble and human this amazing lady really is. So thank you for being here today, Elna. It is truly exciting to be able to download some of the brilliance in your head to help my listeners. Because, and especially on this day, the day before Valentine's Day, the month of love, the day of love and all that goes with Valentine's Day, both good and bad, sexuality is integral to our well-being. And my podcast is all about empowering people to find well-being in their lives and to work towards greater well-being. So without further ado, I'd love to ask you, Elna, to take the microphone and share with us a little bit about the trajectory of your career. How on earth did you get into this field, and how did you get to do all the extraordinary things that you've done?
Yes, it is quite a journey, because when I was in matric, I actually had music as a subject, as one of my subjects, and I was going to be a concert pianist. That is what I thought I was going to be. So it's what you think you're going to be and how it ends up. My fingers nowadays are used for a lot of other things, and it's not for playing the piano. But I'm very blessed to have had the career that I've had, because I think it's because when somebody's saying, we're going somewhere and who wants to go with, I always stick my hand up first and then ask exactly where we're going and what's going to happen there. So which is how I got to run all these comrades, because I should have gotten myself better friends. I started canoeing when I'm so scared of water that you can't believe. But in canoeing, and also I was rather an okay runner. So I used to just sit in the back of the boat and run with men, because mixed doubles was a very competitive sport. And all of these experiences have become almost metaphors when I work. Because I say to people, when you think of running the comrades, and so if I would speak to a patient with vaginismus, for instance, I'd say, first of all, you must want to run. You must want to improve your sex life. You must, because it's no good we forcing you to do things that you don't want to. And then once this is what you want to do, and that it's a journey, because we always speak of the journey. But comrades really is a journey, because first you must just walk around the block and then around 2 blocks, and you must buy the shoes. And the actual day is like a wedding, because you have planned for this. And so I often ask patients, tell me about your wedding. And then they start telling me, well, we started planning a year before. And this whole and why I use a wedding of it as well, because most patients with vaginismus only discover this on the honeymoon, which I like to call the lemon moon, because it just becomes a disaster. It is bittersweet. So, and over the years, yeah, so when you run the comrades, it takes almost a whole day, but you don't remember it exactly. You know, you go through stages, and that is almost the journey of my patient with vaginismus. And Sue, you know, because I send you all my patients. When I find a new patient, I always say, first see the pelvic floor physio. And often you fix them for me. I know they weren't broken and they didn't need fixing, but people think we must do a lot of therapy, we must do, and sometimes, yes, they do need a lot of therapy. But yeah, we plan for the comrades. Where am I going to drink what water? What shoes am I going to wear? Blah, blah, blah. And so those are my metaphors that I use often with patients. I was blessed again to go to America. I met an amazing professor, Professor Domina Renshaw, who actually came from Douglas, which is a very small town close to Kimberley. And she was a psychiatrist that worked in a Jesuit Catholic medical school, Loyola in Chicago. And then she was so years before her time. She passed away. She was 90 when she passed away during COVID. And she was the same age as my mother, and I loved her dearly. And she was my mentor and my American mother. And in the sex clinic, we were only allowed to see heterosexually married couples, because the Pope, she always said, but the Pope will only allow married couples. Nowadays, we don't have to be in South Africa. Couples could be anything, but, and a lot of our couples aren't heterosexual, heteronormative. So many new words I've had to learn in the past 5, 6 years. So at Loyola, we saw a lot of vaginismus. And I think I always used to say I've had a few loves during my life. So my piano was my first love. But then HIV became my next love, because I started working in HIV in the early 80s and actually went to America when HIV was called GRID, gay-related immune deficiency. And so I did a lot of research, worked there for a long time. And then I got breast cancer, and I decided, oh goodness, we're all dying. So I don't want to work with half dead people anymore, because that's my mindset at the time. Did a bit of self-care. Thought I don't want to be burnt out, because working in HIV was really a lot of burnout. And that's when I discovered Dr. Renshaw and went to America and did a PhD with her. So now we're on my third love. So my third love was vaginismus, because I just found, and so if I really have to put it, it's about stigma and shame, because the stigma with HIV and the shame around it, there is stigma around vaginismus in a community, or people will say, oh, we've never heard of this. What is this? What's wrong with you? So patients put stigma on themselves, and there's shame because they feel they're being punished. And a lot of patients, vaginismus patients, are very religious. So they feel maybe I sinned because we kissed before marriage, or other people just think they did other sins. So now I'm in my fourth love, which I never thought I'd be, but going from strict religious Loyola to now being an activist for legal abortions in South Africa and around the world. The Americans have made abortions illegal. Abortions, I actually prefer to call them termination of pregnancy. I work with a lot of patients now who necessarily don't want to terminate their pregnancies, but because of fetal abnormalities. And again, stigma and shame. So I sort of kind of feel, in a nutshell, that is what my work has been and how I've had to learn. Non-judgmental, listen. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen to the patient, because often there's the unspoken things. And I guess around termination of pregnancy just goes the illegal side of terminations in South Africa. Because no matter where you go, you'll find posters on walls saying penis enlargement, lost lover, lotto numbers, safe abortion, and it is so illegal. So that's sort of become my activist mantra about making sure that women can have safe and legal abortions. And I still see vaginismus patients, not so many anymore, because as part of my sexual health, of which Sue, it's our group, it's our friends. So mysexualhealth.co.za started by Elna Rudolph, which a lot of people used to think she's my daughter, or I've remarried initially, but now they've found that this is the other Elna, which is such an amazing support structure for us, for people working in sexual pain, because, we all just we don't want to do harm, and we want to make people be the best version of themselves. So when I still teach at the university, not so regular anymore at Tukkies, I always say that's where sex is a disease, because I teach in public health. So everything's about STIs and just diseases. And then when I come back to my practice, sex is for pleasure. And I say this to all my patients: you don't come here because of you've had sex and now you have a STI, or you've had sex and now you're pregnant. We have sex for pleasure. So I sort of sometimes even wear 2 hats in some way, because when I'm at the university, everything is about statistics and yeah, I was actually just reading this morning, some published that Gauteng now is at its worst again. And funny enough, this is the week of STIs. So the STI week falls slapdash in the happy sexual week as well. Also, ironically.
How they go, hand in hand, pleasure and pain.
I usually call Mondays I call them my regret Mondays. Yesterday was another regret Monday, because people do things over the weekends, and then Mondays they are there either for prep, so post-exposure prophylaxis, pre-exposure prophylaxis, STI testing, morning after pills, just panic.
But I want you to just share with us a little bit about what vaginismus is.
Vaginismus can be primary, so it's from the beginning. They have never been able to penetrate. And secondary could be, we used to have great sex, but something happened. And things do happen. So vaginismus is an involuntary, what is the definition, Sue? An involuntary spasm of the pelvic floor, which isn't always true. Because sometimes when you do a pelvic assessment, there's no involuntary, it is a fear. And so I try and explain to patients as well, we all have fears and phobias. If you're so I'm claustrophobic. So if you're in a lift with me, you're going to have to punch me out because I'm going to be hysterical. But a lot of women have, or people, person with a uterus, is that the right word nowadays? Person with a uterus. they just have an incredible fear. Why? Because family, because of the church. Mother says sex is bad, sex is dirty, save it for the one you love. What an oxymoron of a sentence is that, you know? And so patriarchy, making us feel dirty, telling us our genitals are dirty. You know, well, I just have to do my shopping. It's so irritating for me because it says the female hygiene aisle. And it's like, okay, we're unhygienic, so let's just get into the female hygiene aisle, and then we must buy all the things that's going to make us smell of vanillas, chocolates, and strawberries. Most popular flavors for yogurt, but besides that. So a lot of women with vaginismus had this fear imprinted in them. Sometimes it could have been from a bad medical examination as well. I have over the years seen a few women that have been sexually violated or have been raped or have had some really severe trauma. But on average for me, and I would say 90% of the patients I've seen over the years have been happy, have had a great life, had some form of sex education from school, and so because a lot of people also think they've been traumatized, and sometimes it's not that. But if it is, we also have to deal with that. So again, my reason for listening to the patient, what happened. But a lot of them will tell you. My mother said, if I come home pregnant, they'll chase me out the house. So it's the fear. And I don't think as a mother, I mean, none of us go, I'm going to really, really make sure that you're going to be in therapy one day. We all love our children and we just want to, come on, let's go. And here we go. So the vaginismus patients, and nowadays it's so much easier. I came back to South Africa in 1998 when Viagra launched, funny enough. It all sort of happened at the same time. So at first, coming from America, now I'm going to fix every vaginismus patient on earth, I started working actually with Viagra and teaching doctors how to take sex histories and how to talk sex to their patients, which to this day is probably difficult because it's something that's not taught in medical school. I don't know how much of sex was taught in the physio department, but it's probably much better today. But for most people would like, so let me just backtrack. At Loyola, we had a team effort, very much like my sexual health. So we had medically minded and psychologically minded part of the team. So every patient had a pelvic floor physio, had a therapist, the psychiatrist overlook everything, and a medical doctor, which could be a gynae or just a registrar in training. I came back here and I tried to find physios. People were like, no, I work in bladders. I don't work, no. Take the lift to another floor. I'm not going there. And so over the years, and then one day I stumbled across Hester van Aswegen, and the rest is history. Because from there on, I started finding them. Then I found you, and I don't think there's enough information given to doctors to say, start with the pelvic floor physio. I mean, we're just talking vaginismus, for so many other things, as you know. People don't really know that you guys exist, the importance, and it's not just about penetration. It's like so many other things. What else?
Pain, actually.
Pain. Yeah. It's all about pain. But with pain comes stigma, because patients are too scared to actually, they will just say, I want a pap smear. And then when they come out, discover they can't even do a pap smear. And then the story comes out. But nowadays with social media, I mean, there's great Instagram posts. All of you do great posts, podcasts. I mean, your podcast, so important, so important.
Yeah. We've got to make people aware. And I think the scary thing is that people are scared to talk about sex. People just, for whatever reason, put that on one side of themselves and say, here I am, me, and then there's my sexuality on the very private, unspoken about side of me. And I think that's a real shame. I'm putting together a talk for tomorrow on pleasure. for and you know, I started off this part on sexual pleasure by saying, actually, we have the clitoris, which is purely in our bodies for the purpose of pleasure. So the good creator must have intended for us to have incredible sexual pleasure. And
that is what Dr. Renshaw always used to say. Dr. Renshaw was about 4'8". She was the smallest, minutest little, very devout Catholic, where she looked like a nun, actually, little Jesus around her neck. And she would start off a talk by saying, I didn't invent sex, God did. But I mean, if you don't believe in God, maybe in whatever religion, but it wasn't us. And then she'd say, the clitoris has 8,000 nerve ends, and I definitely didn't put it there. So why do you think that this happened? And it's exactly that. So it was just nice hearing your start to the talk of,
yeah.
Because it's so key.
So I think, and I think people don't realize how integral to our well-being pleasure actually is. So our podcast today is really enabling people to have more pleasure, be it sexual or be it in any other form, in their lives, because that's really good for them. And so, yeah, really happy to have you here. I wanted to ask you, Elna, because I know you work a lot as an activist, not only in abortions, but in creating a more sexually enlightened world, with people who are not heteronormative, as do I. And when it comes to those people, their sexuality is so integral to their identity. You know, often homosexual people will say, hi, I'm Steve and I'm a gay man. Whereas a heterosexual person would never say, hi, I'm Sue and I'm heterosexual. So what do you think the effect of that is, either for good or for bad or somewhere in between, of actually making your sexuality part of your identity? Do you think it's what we should be doing? Do you think it's what we shouldn't? Do you think it's something about the sweet spot somewhere in the middle of those two?
So already years ago, I changed my patient form and put gender. And sometimes, you know, because now it's actually very important that we know, are you non-binary? What do you identify with or as? Because somebody said to me one day, isn't it obvious what my gender is? And I'm like, nah. It's not obvious, dear. And she was not very impressed with me. But I was just also trying to make a point, you know. So there are certain things that we can make, just make our practice more, because the way we speak, it's been a difficult journey for me because I'm quite an ally, but I do sometimes still he, she. So I've learned to say, what are your pronouns? Almost to start there, because often medical people are the obstruction, why people don't want to tell us. And so sometimes I laugh at patients because a couple would come and I say, are you married? And they go, yes. And I'm saying to each other, because I've learned never to assume. Because sometimes people are married to other people. So it's like a little joke, breaking the ice, off we go again. So I do, I again, back to my sexual health. We have such a wonderful group of different people with different interests, but we all under the same umbrella. And it's made it so much easier if we have to refer. You know, I often see, because I've been around so long, people will bring me their young teenagers and say, well, they're not sure. And then I'm like, and now I'll happily see them, but then I also think, you know what, I look like your grandmother, and you probably just think this person hasn't had sex for 100 years, so I'd rather not speak to her. And then there's others in the group that I can say, I think this would be a good fit for you. See one of the others on the group, and the younger ones, and they're not that young. I always try and say to people, you know, it takes almost 14 years to be a gynecologist. And most of us on that group have all studied master's and PhD level. So a lot of us have done, I mean, I know, Sue, you've probably studied 17 years because you just never keep on studying, keep on doing other things. So, you know, we are all a bunch of experts. And
and I think
where are we going with my children?
Is to make people realize that there are people that can help should something not be working in your sex life. Or if you have any kind of fear or worry, there's nothing you can't say to somebody who's non-judgmental and is qualified to talk about sex with you and help you with your sex problems. And if they can't help you, they know somebody that they can refer you to. So I think you make a really good point for our listeners.
And I think it's good why the group also is either medical or, the whole biopsychosocial is there. So we've got doctors that are trained specifically how to medically help patients, or there's psychologists, therapists, and counselors that can help from the psychological side. I love Casey on our group, because Casey often speaks to the parents of children. Casey Blake is what is Casey? She's a registered.
She's a psychologist. Yeah.
She's also done this. God knows how many I've known her. Also saw her as a young student now. So I love to make use of Casey, because Casey can speak to the parents of the non-binary child, or so not specifically, because not everybody in our group also will specifically work with children, and sometimes pediatricians aren't trained to do that either. But I think for all of us, it's about education, and helping to navigate. Now that we have load shedding, I call them lovingly these little guys on the street corner, and that stops people and just help to control the traffic. That's how I feel is my role nowadays. I'm like, whoa, okay, let's see the problem. No, you need to go to Sue. No, you need to go to a medical doctor, because it's no good sitting with somebody and you actually just, medical aids run out, frustration. And to also, we must know our community resources as well, because not everybody is on a medical scheme, and to find out where can we go, who can we help, which NGO can help. Yep.
But the bottom line is there is help for everybody.
Yes. And help, we must.
Suffering silence and feeling ashamed and too ashamed to speak out. So I find a lot of people that come to my practice are suffering from low libido. I don't know if you see a lot of this problem in your clinic, Elna, but certainly in your work with sexology, I'm sure that has been something that you've come up against. And within relationships, there's a desire discrepancy. One partner who wants sex on a daily or weekly or whatever it is basis, and the other partner who would happily never have sex again if they could just choose.
I used to say I'd rather make tea than make love. Not me, my patients. It was so often, because we do just a lot of women's health in the clinic. So often my patients will come for their repeat script because they're on a contraceptive, and then they're like, I want to go off the pill because and that's true. A contraceptive can cause loss of libido, but you also often have to say what else is happening in your life. And a woman are perimenopausal and going through the menopause, and so much stuff that happens to us. And because sometimes it is not the medication, it's not the relationship is good, but there's other stuff. Moms are tired. When I see women mainly in childbearing age, so there's so much, they're juggling so many roles. I always say your kids are hanging on for you, your husband's trying to hang you from your vagina, and now there's so many, everybody wants something from you. And you just say yes for everything, but you say no, I don't want to make love, because it's just one less hassle to have. And when it becomes, don't call it a hassle, because the average male will ejaculate within 3 to 5 minutes, and the average woman takes slightly longer to orgasm, 12 to 14 minutes. So we need some time here, or again, I use metaphor of food. McDonald's, you can get a meal within 3 minutes. So sometimes we must just have McDonald's sex, and that's it, or drive through. And sometimes we can have Christmas, because for Christmas, and so, or let's call it Valentine's Day sex. You need to already have made your plans. You should have gone to do your wax or whatever it is that you do already. You can't go and wax tomorrow morning. You'll be red and sore. Just plan a little bit. Because again, back to my weddings, I listen to people, they plan weddings for a year. for also like a short 3-5 hour period. So just put some little effort, some little effort.
And I think a lot of women don't think and don't realize that sex is good for them as well as for the men.
As well, absolutely.
Saying, I've got to do it for my husband, I know. But no, you actually have to do it for yourself, because it's an essential form of self-care, actually. And it's
So
essential.
there's like always a list of why orgasms are good for you. So one is it, for your blood flow and the feel good and all the endorphins that are going to happen and a lot of things. And so I often also say to people, the less we the less we have sex, the less we're going to want it. Because if you think of Christmas or whatever big celebration, Ramadan, you fast, then you eat a lot. The more you have sex, the more you're going to feel like it. Because if you think Christmas, we ate so much, and then the next day we say, and then on that day you say, I'm not going to have sex till food. I'm going to eat till New Year. I ate too much. You wake up starving the next morning. Where are the leftovers? And if you have good sex, you'll crave. You'll want more good sex, and it's well, there's so many good things about it, but it's also good for your pelvic floor, isn't it, Sue? You have to use that pelvic floor. Yes. Yeah.
And the quality of the blood flow and the tissues of the vaginal region.
Yeah.
And for the men, it's really important for their pelvic floors as well, and for keeping that muscle able to contract and relax, and never mind the nerve supply to the area, which we need to keep patent. So yes, it's really important for men and for women, and it's essential to your well-being. I think that the old mentality, the old-fashioned mentality of sex is taboo, and it shouldn't be spoken about, and it's private, and it's mostly for men, and it's not for women's pleasure, and it's shameful and embarrassing. I think that mentality prevails in many households, and I wanted to ask you, what can mums and dads, and I do say mums and dads, do to help their children to make sexual health more possible for their children? Because I think so often, as you said, it's programmed to be taboo, and it could be different.
So in our group is Dr. Mpumi Zenda, who is a gynecologist and sexologist. And so this is not necessarily around sex, but she's just written a book called Mommy, My Body is Changing. And so if anybody has got a niece, a cousin, a daughter that is sort of between 9 and 12, this is the most brilliant book written by a Zulu woman. She wrote it for her own child, with that in mind. And it's just so beautifully written, and about consent, and nobody can touch your body, but also because young girls will start their periods at 9. Hopefully not all young girls, but we know the early bloomers will start at 9, and some of the late bloomers maybe 14 or 15. But it's just so beautifully written, and just from your breasts are going to change, and these are pads, and these are tampons, and these are menstrual cups, and you don't have to jump in with because she does speak about sexual consent later in the book as well. Yeah, it's called Mommy, My Body is Changing. Now it's back to front there, Sue. But it's just written by a friend, a colleague, and it's just like a beautiful book. I always say read it like the Bible. You read a bit here, you read a bit there, or you start from the beginning to the end. There's also a boy book, and that is actually an American book, and that is called What's Going On Down There. And it's so somebody must write the boy book as well, because we need to write books for South African children, because the American books are all, everybody's on a yellow bus and they're all in snow, and our South African children are the ones that we really need to empower, look after them, because our statistics are just horrendous. Every and I'm not going to speak about abortion, but I want to talk about teenage pregnancies, because now Christmas, they were all sitting there, small children with their children, and then they say, I don't even know how many thousand children gave birth over December. And it's really not what we want for our young women. And it is the parents' role to actually teach. And if you don't think you're good enough, ask Google or ask somebody else. But if we don't speak to our children, other people will. And if our children don't know, because there's this idea that keep them ignorant, then they'll remain innocent. And we need to educate. We need to educate, not keep them ignorant, because if they don't know what's normal, how will they know if they're being abused? How will they know if they're being groomed? So important for me.
I think that's so critical, as so many mums and dads think if they don't talk about sex, then sex won't become a thing. But it's exactly opposite to that. And so I'd love to ask you, what do you think, Elna, is the first step towards dealing with the gender-based violence crisis we face in this country, which is catastrophically bad, and it's the worst thing to talk about the day before Valentine's Day, but it really is a fact that we have to confront.
So we need to have men as partners. We need to not just talk to girls, we need to talk to boys as well. I see so many 14-year-olds pregnant in the clinic where we can do nothing because they come when they're 6 months pregnant. And a lot of these were from much older men. So young teenagers are targets as well. But parents, it has to, I was listening to something about education and I thought it's so true, because somebody from the education department said, we only have your child for 5 or I don't know how long you go to school nowadays, say 7 hours a day. There are still the rest of the day that they spend with you. And yes, we know there's child-run households and there are single parent households, but it is up to the parents as well, or an older sister, or in the family. And that's why I feel like Mpumi's book should actually be part of the school curriculum. When they get, like we vaccinate young girls at 9 for HPV virus, but they should also be getting the book here. This is part of your handout. Dr. T, who's our other colleague and who works with me, her book that she wrote is called Dr. T, A Guide to Sexual Health and Pleasure. And I love that because it just says it's about your sexual health and pleasure. But sexual health encompasses so much more than just, we have to do our pap smears. We must also check our breasts. That's a lovely thing. I always say to the woman, your husband needs to check your breasts Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, twice on the weekends. So, because most breast lumps are found by men. Or no, I shouldn't say by men, by the partner. Because breast is so much part of our sexual makeup as well. And for a lot of women, they're too embarrassed to say, I get so much pleasure from breast stimulation. I mean, some people are just like, it does nothing for me. But nipples has erectile tissue, just like a penis. It can stand and it can get erect. And the connection is right there. So never ignore the breasts as well. We just have to say that to the partner.
Just thinking of Dr. T's book, I had it on my shelf and I had a 92-year-old man and he picked up this book and he said, may I borrow this, please? How divine was that? So yes, I couldn't have been more delighted if I tried to lend him my book and improve his sex life at 92. So yeah, I really
like saying that, people think the ages don't have sex. There's such good examples. President Zuma had a baby when he was 80. The woman had a baby with President Zuma. Right now, Al Pacino has a 6-month-old baby, and so has Robert De Niro. These are just public figures of men that are sexually active, because people will say to me, well, when do we stop having sex? For men, when they close their eyes. So they can still produce sperm. So, whereas for women, also, again, women think, oh, from age 40, I can't fall pregnant. I've got 2 patients at the moment that's 48 and pregnant in our clinic. Wow. Yeah. So the 45 and 48, and they are were horrified at first and now are happily pregnant. But so not all our pregnancies in our clinic end in disaster. Some we do have. I call them the ones who get away from me, and I'm happy that they got away from me. So again, we have to be aware that we only go in menopause 1 year. You have to be in menopause. You must not have periods for 1 year when you can say, I am now menopausal. Otherwise, you need to use a contraceptive, or otherwise you're going to be what we call a geriatric mother. If you're over 40, we call you geriatric mothers. And
I thought you were a geriatric mother if you were over 35, which is quite extraordinary.
Yeah, well, we have many geriatrics that we see. So, and again, women delay motherhood. You know, there's such, so one of my other colleagues, he's all about banking eggs, Dr. Neelam Pillai from Hope Clinic. So we encourage the busy businesswoman who's 35 now and says, well, I don't have a man now, when am I going to have children? Go and bank your eggs. You will make enough money and then you can have a surrogate baby. You know, those are the trends, and that's what we see. We see older mothers, but and this is why so many teenagers are pregnant, because 200 years ago, by the time you got to 20, you were probably dead anyway, because you died from multiple childbirth. So we live so much longer. My mom passed away last year at age 92, and I know, extraordinary. You know, you only become an adult. Well, that's what I say. You can only be an adult once you don't have parents anymore. So I only became an adult at age 65, very late bloomer. It's because as long as you have a mom, you're still her child, and you can still phone and say, Mom. But yeah, it's I have become quite philosophical nowadays, you know,
I can
because
hear that. I love it. And what I'm hearing you say, if I had to parse it out, is that there's essential need for everybody to have choice. And in this day and age, it is possible for us to have choice. We can choose to use contraceptives. We can choose to say no. We can choose who we want to have sex with and when we want to have sex with them. And we can choose to enjoy good sex. And we can choose to continue to have sex long after we're menopausal if we're women, and long after our partners are menopausal if we're men. And so there's just so much choice. And I think it's really important for people to bring those choices conscious and actually become more mindful and aware of the choices that they have, and really action choosing. That's definitely something I advocate for very, very strongly, is use the choices. You know, people died for you to have choices. Now, you know, utilize them as best you can. And I think that's really important. Can you talk a little bit about keeping sexually active after menopause? Because I think that's a big factor. Many of my patients are postmenopausal and are maybe suffering from thinning vaginal walls and dry vagina, and therefore sex has become painful and they're just not in the mood and they don't like it and they don't want it. Talk to us about that, Elna. What can be done? What should be done apart from
so much can be done, and to not live, because pain should not be part of sexual pleasure. Oh, it can be in other scenarios, but well, some people are into BDSM, but we're not there today. So to be aware of thinning, so your periods have stopped. So lubrication, lube, you can never have enough lube, and also stay away from the flavored and the bubble gum, and there's so many choices again from lube, but go for plain, and we've got great lubes on the website. People must go and look on the website as well, mysexualhealth.co.za. If both are aging, so often we now have Viagra, Cialis, Levitra. We have all this medication for aging men who have erectile dysfunction, and then the female is the one who says, no, well, I don't want to. Just have lube next to the bed. Get a vibrator. That's probably the best thing that will keep your I wanted to talk about the single ones as well, because sometimes we are single and we're not having a partner. Self-love, so good for yourself. Clitoral stimulators, all sorts of vibrators. And nowadays you just get it online. Even Take a Lot, you can get it from there, well as nowadays as well. But a very good online sex store. Matilda's, it's called Matilda's. Matilda's.co.za, great website where you can browse and then things look interesting, and that's also in a way quite exciting for people. Most sex stores aren't really woman friendly. I think there's one here in Bryanston, but otherwise there's not really woman friendly sex stores. They mainly for men. Are there still any?
I think there are. I think there are, and I think it's just about having the courage to show up and go to a sex store, and what the hell, the person's never going to see you again. So go and love yourself through buying yourself a me-to-me that's going to enable you to bring yourself sexual pleasure.
And sometimes you just need a tiny little clitoral stimulator. You don't, I mean, you get all sorts of types, or Sex in the City made the rabbit, it was called the rabbit, very popular, that TV series from years ago. Put that on the market. I was just thinking about Sexpo. Sexpo comes to town once a year. It's usually in Pretoria, and it's a bit like the Rand Easter show, but it's just for adults. And it's actually quite a fun event to go with. As Sasha, the South African Sexual Health Association, we always used to have a stand there every year and just be there, and people could ask us anything. And we used to go and learn as well from other things, because there's all sorts of new gadgets on the market. Half the time I wasn't even sure where it should be going, but educational. I also get my patients, I'm sure your patients as well, sometimes teach us quite a lot. They say, I found this, or, and again, that's why I say, know your community resources, I still give patients hands out, I suppose, because I teach at the university. I call it my bibliotherapy. So I often just find an article that I think, oh, this is nice, read this, or find a link, because nowadays people just want to link things. But so just saying that for vaginismus, there are excellent, it used to be called vaginismus.com, but it's called something else now on Instagram. And I don't know so much about TikTok. TikTok seems to be the one to go to at the moment, but I just usually just send patients to Instagram and say, just put in vaginismus, something called tight-lipped. It's kind of what it says, we are tight-lipped, because that's why we have vaginismus. Our lips doesn't want, quite creative how people call their sites. There's also a lot of nonsense on Instagram. Things like vaginal steaming. Please don't steam your vagina. She doesn't need steam.
Can you talk to us about the vaginal flora and how the vagina is self-cleaning?
Absolutely. So that's what steaming is all about. We must steam ourselves clean. There's things called yoni pearls. It's like a little bag that, over the years, I have removed very strange objects out of orifices, because people would read you can put garlic inside your vagina, or you must just wash it. Or so don't touch. You wash like you wash under your arms with simple soap. I always say people will use green bar sunlight and Protex, and I'm like, she's a baby. Your vulva is a baby, but she's also skin like the rest of your body. And people don't always realize that you can get skin conditions on your genitals. My best friend is a dermatologist. My friend who's a man, he's not my boyfriend, he's a friend. He's just a colleague, but he always tells me there are 6,000 skin conditions, and he knows everything. And I only know 28, which was the STIs. So I'm like, yes, and that's why you always teach me. But from him, I learned so much about skin, and he's bought me books about genital skins. And but treat your skin kind. Don't
And never clean inside the vagina.
Never inside. Oh, sorry, your lactobacilli. I try and explain to people it's like a swimming pool that is blue and beautiful. And then you wake up one morning and your pool has turned green. And I tell the swimming pool man at the shop, we in the same business. We are in the pH business, because I'll go with the water and he'll be, what did you do? What did you put inside there? You put acid in there. And I'm like, no, I did nothing. And the same can happen then to women, because I'm like, what did you do? Tell me what you wash with. Because if we change that pH, so chaos happens. And luckily, we don't turn green like my swimming pool, but we can be itchy. It can be smelly. Bacterial vaginosis often has a fishy smell. Candida, yeast infection. Often, if you're on antibiotics, take a probiotic. Tell your doctor, I'm prone to Candida. All of this has happened to all of us. Could be from the underwear that we wear. G-strings can cause it. Anything can cause it. Nothing can cause it.
And I always say to my patient, we can clean sewage with bacteria. We don't need chemicals. So it's exactly the same with your vagina and your penis. They clean themselves. You just need to be outside and relax, enjoy it. It's beautiful.
Yes, I think that is because we, again, don't make stigma and shame to people, because bacterial vaginosis and Candida, I always say it's like the Kardashians. It's like Kim and Chloe. They're everywhere. If you put on the TV, there's a Kardashian on the TV. We all can have that. And also diabetics. So with diabetes, Candida can also be very common and prone. And in men, it's called balanitis. They can get like a Candida type of condition. I always think, because men have publics, it's so much easier. It's there. They can look at it and they come much quicker. But, Sue, I'm trying my best to not just make it male and female. Uterus owners.
I understand. We have to open our minds to new links, and it's complicated.
So they, to say they and not she or he. So they have to be aware that these things do happen, and not every infection is a disease. Because infections are things like syphilis and gonorrhea and HIV. Those are diseases. Infections are just that. Not all infections cause disease. So bacterial vaginosis and Candida is infections, and that can be treated very easily. Sometimes over the counter it can be treated. Yeah.
I think one of the most important things that you're alluding to, but not actually saying, and I'm going to draw it out and highlight it, is we just don't want to allow these things to be filled with shame. And I had a patient the other day who told me that when she was small, she was caught by her parents masturbating, and she was hauled off by the hair to the doctor, and the doctor had to examine her to see if there was something wrong with her, that she was masturbating in this way. And this poor woman has carried such unbelievable shame around herself, her sexuality, and her body ever since then. And it just doesn't have to be that way, and it just shouldn't be that way. And I wish that after listening to you talking today, where you're so fluid and easy with sex and it's so integral to everyday life for you, that people can take away this real gift of losing the shame to do with sexuality. If you have an infection or a disease, there doesn't have to be any shame. So what if it happens to be in your genital? It just happens to be a disease and it needs some help, and there are people that can help you. If you have pain, if you have premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction, what's to be ashamed of?
I am the godmother to about 17 children. So, because I used to be part of a canoe club and the canoeists, and so I've become their surrogate mother, and so all these children are my godchildren. And it was so beautiful, because the one family that came, they all came to swim. So there's a little 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, a girl and a boy. And they're both running naked around. And then every now the mother just feels then she keeps on saying, come put on your clothes, come put on your clothes. And I find we celebrate nakedness in men. You know, Tulani can pee in the bushes and we're like, oh, come and see Tulani. Look here, he's a man. Look how he pees. But a little girl, she must cover up all the time. And they literally just kids running around having it. Children don't sexualize things. They just play around. This is my body and I'm proud of it. And in fact, the older sister got a book from me, for one of Mpumi's books for Christmas, because, and it was such an example for me again of how we keep on saying, no, don't touch, don't do that. If I tell you the amount of nursery schools that have phoned me to say, the children are masturbating when they're supposed to be sleeping. And I'm like, isn't that wonderful? They've got genitals, they've discovered it. Don't shame them.
We don't shame them when they find their toes. So
yeah.
why?
Yeah. So I often think it's the adults that are uncomfortable and they don't know how to deal with it. So now they're projecting all of that on the child. So what is actually quite normal behavior, because good grief, I'm so happy that these children find their clitorises and they discover that's pleasure. But we also might sometimes have to say that feels good, hey, but let's do it when you not in the lounge with all the grandparents or whatever, but just normalize it. And yes, it feels good, but now go do it in your bedroom.
Exactly. But just teach.
Rather than have to be taken to a doctor and examined. And often also people might think this child was molested. Why are they doing it? It's actually just a normal, they discover, not all discover it, some of them discover it, but it's okay for a boy. I mean, young boys, they hang on to their penises and make sure it's there, and but we often don't shame them. Or they also be shamed. And I don't think, it's generational, because it goes on, because your parents shamed you, so you shame the kids. And somewhere we've got to break the tradition. And education.
Yeah. And we live in a world where we've got all the bad stuff of being in the modern world. We might as well take the good stuff, which is we're free to talk. There's freedom of speech. There's choice.
But because of the way we live, we also need to make the child aware that you are the only one that touches, or mommy can touch you and when we bath you, but nobody else is to touch. And we need to say that to boys as well. There's a little song that they sing with, like, this is my body, nobody touches me, or they can, and they can touch here. Or I always just say to parents also, don't let people kiss your children on the mouth, they'll get herpes. The French had a good thing going. Yeah, because that's what happens. People have fever blisters, they don't realize fever blisters are herpes. Now the child's got herpes. Especially newborns. Don't give them disease.
And shouldn't be kissing children on the mouth necessarily, unless the child wants it, but I shouldn't imagine they do.
Yeah. And I can remember as a child, you'd be lined up and here comes the uncles and now you must go. And I was very ugly and had red hair and very shy. And then it's like, but go and kiss uncle. And now you must kiss uncle on the mouth. And if I didn't, it was like a big deal. So, some kids are just tactile defensive. Leave me alone. Don't force them to go to the uncles or the aunties. It's not bad manners. It's just the child doesn't like, for whatever reason.
Elna, we could go on talking all day. I just love conversing with you, and I love all the wisdom that you've gained over all these many, many years in your clinic and taking trains around the country doing pap smears in tiny towns and villages, and every time you're doing some other amazing community initiative and drive. You're such an activist. You're such a gift to the world. And I just thank you for giving us the gift of talking to us today, talking to me today, and sharing all these pearls of wisdom and all of your insight. And I just really, really appreciate you. Always appreciate you, but I appreciate you especially this morning. And thank you for this conversation. And I really, really hope that people have benefited from hearing your attitude, mostly just your attitude, which just permeates everything you say. Thank you. Thank you for all the amazing work you do in the world and always have done. I hope you also look after you and take care of you and don't work yourself to death. But thank you, and I will speak to you very soon.
Thanks, Sue.
Please push the subscribe button so that you can be alerted when future episodes are available. Thank you for listening.